right, good evening and welcome back to Kivumbi 2017. This is the fourth hour of the show. Tonight, launched at about 6 p.m. This is our flagship election show, and we'll be looking through the different issues that affect the country, that affect the elections. And tonight we've been discussing about the tragedy that befell the country today, because the ICT manager at the IEBC, Chris Msando's body was finally found somewhere in Kikuyu, and the body was transferred to the city mortuary. And we were just talking about this. What does this really mean? And Barack, we were at you, actually, where you were talking about something you didn't seem to like about what Kamala said.
Yes, and you promised to give me...
I promised to give you a chance to disagree.
Plenty of time to disagree. Now, you see, first, I think we are in mourning. We have got to accept that. We've got to accept that this is very unfortunate. We also have got to accept that here is an individual who has been killed, from what we have been told. And then we have got to allow ourselves full expression and to acknowledge even the political undertones and uppertones as well. That he is a gentleman who was in charge of ICT, that ICT has been a bone of contention in this whole matter. It should not surprise me to hear in the next few days somebody saying that with him has gone also a certain password, or I've gone certain passwords. Maybe I'm running ahead of myself, but that is
so
my
what do you disagree with?
That is my assignment. That some people seem to be just too ready to start mining political capital out of this. We must talk about it, because the election process that he was involved with is a political process, that the government that is supposed to be elected is a political government. And you know what? In the Lake Basin, when people mourn, and I know that you must have a bit of that experience, they are very expressive. They even speak to the dead, and they tell the dead person, whoever has killed you, do not leave him alone. You must follow him. Die and go like a man, but you must follow. And then we have got all those teroburu things where people speak. And so we must not muzzle and muffle ourselves. We must speak about this.
I think, Joe, I don't think, Joe, the issue is whether or not we should discuss Chris Msando's death. I think it's to say, look, it's night one. Let's allow the family a period to mourn their child. At this point, by the way, if I'm a family member, I actually don't care who or why. On this night, I just know I've lost a child. So what I'm saying is that it's not that we must not speak about it, but I hate to hear the words on day one about assassination. He was killed because it was so as to subvert the election. Hello, give us a day. That's the only point I'm making. This is a grievous killing of a Kenyan. Let's give ourselves time. This thing of rushing to ask what is the political implications is irresponsible.
In the Lake Basin, we do it differently. Yeah. In the Lake Basin, and I appreciate that we are talking about a cocktail of cultures, a basket of cultures from the mountain, from the valleys, from the plains. But in the Lake Basin, that is how we mourn. We start addressing the issues from day one. So let the family mourn, but let it mourn.
Okay, gentlemen, I would like us to listen to an interview, actually to watch an interview we had with Chris Msando on the Round Table Show, which is hosted by my colleague Asha Mwilu just a few weeks ago. Just watch and hear what he had to say.
So, Chris, do you think there's a weakness on August 8th that we arrived there, we're voting? So how do we protect the sanctity of our vote?
Let me first of all, I want to make something clear, because I think we are so stuck in the experiences of 2013 that we are not thinking about what the Commission is doing at this time. Please. You see, in 2013, the technology failed, not because the technology was faulty. There were certain issues around that technology that contributed immensely to the failure. 80% of the contribution to technology failure was human. Yes, was human. There was no adequate training. People were not trained. Some of those devices arrived on election day. They were not charged. The batteries were not charged. They reached the polling stations, and the officers tried to turn them on. They couldn't go on because they had no charge. The people were not trained very well. People did not interact with this technology. They didn't know how to use it. These clerks that were hired to do this work. Those are the contributors of the technology failing. Gabriel has said very well, and Walubengo, you know, we have conducted, I don't know how many by-elections after 2013.
All right, that's Chris Msando, the late Chris Msando, speaking to KTN News just about 3 months ago on the Roundtable program. Now, Felix, you understand how elections work very well. You've been involved in some of the discussions, even the laws that have been passed and everything. Just how central, you were about to explain that when we took that break, just how central is ICT in this election for those who may not understand, and you try and compare that with 2013?
I mean, the success of 2017 election substantially depend on the success of technology. And I think this is one of the things that emerged during the bipartisan joint committee of Kiraitu Murungi, and that was led by Kiraitu Murungi and James Orengo. When it emerged very clear that, one of the outcomes of that discussion actually introduced the so-called the KIMS, which essentially is the technology that should govern this election. There was a recognition then that part of the failures of 2013, as Chris was trying to articulate, was the failures of technology. And he was right. I mean, some of the so-called events arrived on a day two, the elections of 2013. Now, technology is so central to 2017 that its functionality, its success, and everything else is something that the country has debated. Of course, there has been counter debates to that. But if this election is to work, and if this election is to be credible, transparent, free, fair, verifiable, etc., as per Article 81 of the Constitution, then technology must work and must function efficiently. The other things, of course, is the so-called the finality of the vote at the constituency of the polling station and the constituency level that the Court of Appeal ruled on. But technology is central to this election.
Okay, Joy, as a lawyer, how significant is this ruling that came from the Court of Appeal about the constituency being sort of the final tallying center? As a matter of fact, some people have expounded further to actually say it is the polling station that is the final one, because no one can actually change that. The constituency just receives and collates from the different polling stations.
I'll pick up from where Felix has left off. With the new dispensation we are going into, why the constituency is being held as the first port of call is because, according to the law, there are some of the results that must be declared at the constituency level. Others are declared at the county level. And then the presidential ones are declared at the national level. And therefore, the implication of this ruling was, what we receive at the constituency level should be preserved intact and should be what is tallied at the national level. So even though the declaration is made by the IEBC at the National Tallying Center, what is received from the constituency level should be what is tallied at the national level. Why that is significant is because in times past, you have had this tradition where people would have a certain result at the constituency level, and your agents go home knowing that this is the result we have. But between there and Nairobi, the tallying center in Nairobi, there would be something that would happen. Now, in days gone past, it was ballot stuffing. By the time it was Kivuitu's time, it was people switching off their phones and disappearing and appearing in the morning with a new Form 16A. In 2013, it was the failure of the system that led to people changing the result that they were there.
But the IEBC, I mean, speaking to them, they are very happy to implement what the Court of Appeal said. But speaking to them, you get the sense that they feel that something could actually go wrong, that even if they saw that there was an error in something that was entered there, there's nothing they can do about it, and it can only be challenged in a court of law. And let me bring...
Which is what the court now was trying to say. Look, if this matter has been determined at the constituency level, it must be preserved as it is to the national level. Even if you see an error apparent on the face of the record...
But Martin, that can be quite dangerous in our country. I mean, where you declare something and say, well, it had an error, but the Court of Appeal said it's final.
You know, Joe, I wish we could approach this whole election things from a very simple perspective. If only we had high levels of trust. Because elections are coming on one day and we are finishing it and life is going on.
So it's a trust issue, as Gideon Guy once said.
Because basically, as soon as, I mean, again, when we say that technology is the be and all on these elections, perhaps again, it's not exactly true. The only element of technology that you are deploying, okay, there are two sides of technology you are deploying. One is the identification bit of it, that once you bring in your fingerprint, then your details come out. The rest is a manual process.
No, but to be fair, Martin, the registration is technology-driven. No. The identification is technology-driven. The results is
let's be serious about this thing. That our elections are largely manual. That as soon as you go in there, first you have to produce your ID before you even are allowed to do the BVR. Then after that, you do your finger, and then your details come up. And then after that, you are given manual, ballots to mark. Then it's put back. So the only other time now you get onto this is once this has been done, you transmit these results using technology. So basically, we are somewhere in between. Yes, identification. Ideally, we would have done it through, I mean, if you ask me, we are making so much noise, we are spending so much money. When I send my money so easily with M-Pesa, very easily with technology, and if only we had high levels of trust, we could do elections in an hour in this country, and we are finished, and we collect this. Okay. But for now, we are where we are because even the ruling about the constituency, basically what you're saying is that once the results have been declared at a polling station, the only other point at which that collation happens is at a constituency level. And beyond that, you already know that in a constituency X, the president got so much, the governor got this, and so you actually have results at that point.
Okay, Dr. Awiti, is it a trust thing, or do we actually have a real problem with how we've managed elections in this country?
I think the conduct of this election and all of the conversations around it is a uniquely Kenyan moment. This is a stubbornly low trust environment. Trust is our biggest national deficit. We just don't trust each other. Elections are basically places where you game the system and you get advantage. And I would like to agree with him in saying that this is some kind of a halfway house. The electronic system is basically verification and transmission. The rest of the process is a manual process. Now, can we trust the people who sit in those houses where we do the polling to actually do the right thing? That not more than the people who are registered in that place will come to vote. And anybody who hasn't shown up, you can't mark those ballots. These are still the very, very simple, low-tech problems that we have. There will some people max out on the number of registered voters in those polling stations. That even though the turnout is actually 75%, it turns out to be 95%. These are the problems that we've had every election. And I don't even see how technology is going to solve them until the people inside the system are actually people that you can trust, men and women of integrity.
I mean, I've had the commissioners explain this, and they say, well, there are safeguards in this election that first, when you go there, first of all, every constituency, I mean, every polling station cannot have more than 700 people, and those 700 people are known that if it is a polling station X primary school, that you know the 700, and that my biometrics reside in that polling station, so there's no one who can come from elsewhere.
So what they're saying is that as soon as you show up, there's a diary that is filled. So we know the number of people who walked into the polling station. We know the number of ballots that were issued, the number of ballots that were marked, and then the number of people who actually voted in that place. So there are many ways you can check these things. But until the day that I will touch a screen and cast my vote, this thing is still a halfway house between manual and electronic.
Barack, electronic voting in this country, would you trust that process? Do you think Kenyans would?
Yes, I think, in fact...
you just touch some screen and you're voted?
Of course, we would, because there are lots of things where we just touch the screen and we get what we want. When you go to the ATM...
But they will say that, Barack touched it 3 times.
When you touch the ATM and then it tells you, okay, you have no money, sorry, we cannot give you money at this moment. You don't start asking it, what about the check that I put in the other day? But the thing called trust, which they are talking about, is something that is nurtured. We must interrogate ourselves and ask at what point did we start losing trust in one another. And I think that this technology has, yes, agree we haven't quite gotten there, but there have been certain incremental gains where we have been told that in the manual process, everybody, including those who are dead, are identified as being alive and they're going to vote. If there's just that little limitation that those who are dead are not going to come up and vote, or we have been told that if there is staffing and there's excessive voting, that the system is going to reject the results in that particular station. I think these are incremental gains, which we should not just rubbish.
And I'll get back to this technology business in a moment, but I wanted the two gentlemen to cool down a little bit, but I want to go back. I want to go back to something that Dr. Awiti alluded to a little bit earlier, and the death of the IEBC's ICT manager is not the only strange development as we gear up for the election. An intruder armed with a machete attacked the deputy president's residence in Sugoi over the weekend, injuring a GSU officer. The man, who has since been identified as Mohammed Ibrahim, was gunned down after an 18-hour showdown with security officers. That attack and the murder of Msando have prompted questions of the state of security ahead of the next Tuesday's polls. And I think we can speak to Simiyu Werunga. I don't know whether we have him on phone right now. All right, we'll be speaking to get a security perspective, but this surely is a worrying development, Felix, that there have been a number of things. Actually, Dr. Awiti even took it back to the very surprising death, you would say, of Kaiseri.
I mean, it's worrying. And the coincidence of this coming literally 2 weeks to the elections, people can't help but draw a parallel. I think a number of questions needs to be asked, and I think the media has been at the forefront of asking these very important questions. You know, how could somebody, a man with a machete, invade and take siege, or take hostage, literally, the home of the deputy president? Is our law enforcement agencies or security sector, so to speak, up to the task? And just like the death of Chris, I hope that there would be expeditious investigation on this. I heard on news today that the government of the US and the UK have offered to lend a hand in this. I think it's something that is worth exploring, but fundamental questions need to be asked. I hope there is no coincidence with this election. Kenyans desire and yearn for free, fair, and peaceful elections. And I think as a country, we should take a collective decision that we do all that pertains, or all that is within our powers to guarantee a credible process.
Now, Kamodo, this security issue extends beyond just the IEBC officials. I mean, I was speaking to one of the running mates of the presidential candidates, and he was making a joke and saying, you know, I'm a very important person. If something happens to me today, you guys have no election. And that's a real issue. I mean, to think that some of these people actually might just be walking around without security. It's true, and I think that's what I alluded to. It's at a time like this, the security infrastructure that enables us to have an election is critical. And because at a time like this, we are also very suspicious of everything, even things that ordinarily happen in our lives. You know, we like to attach them and explain them around the elections. It's also very important that when these things happen, there is information that is given to the public, so that the public is not left with, you know, the process of creating stories and propaganda. And I think whoever is in charge of the security dockets and the IG must ensure that on a day-to-day basis, all these issues that don't seem to make sense are explained. That way we can have the confidence that someone is in charge. But I think the need to ensure that the critical persons that would derail the elections 2017 are protected to the fullest extent humanly possible is something that we must not play around with. It could give us a problem in a few days' time. And this country must have a peaceful election, and we must move on after that election. We must still remain one country. Because what might end up happening is that we have created so much suspicion that even if we have a free and fair election, we will still have to live with a very divided and distrusting country. So whatever it is that we can do now to tell people, yes, things go wrong, but the explanations for them and where there are things that somebody has been punished is critical. All right, thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. You're watching Kivumbi 2017. We are taking a breather, but I'm still here with my super panel, and we are going to be looking at this election in very many different dimensions. Don't go away.